now we have time for questions, and I hope I saw several specialists on this period, and I hope that you can unmute yourself and ask questions, please. And your Russian colleagues could also ask questions in Russian. Дорогие дамы и господа, у вас есть сейчас возможность задать вопросы нашим докладчикам, и вы можете задавать вопросы тоже на русском языке, и наши переводчики симультанно это все переведут.
Вы знаете, можно я даже не вопрос, а хочу сказать Александру Андрееву, может быть, он не в курсе, но есть точное место жительства его, одного из его персонажей, про которого он говорил, это про Бранхорста. Он жил в здании, которое сейчас, это место сейчас находится под главным штабом Государственного Эрмитажа. Когда мы проводили археологические раскопки, уточняли, кто там жил до этого момента, и там есть точное местоположение дома, где жил лаковый мастер, знаменитый Бранхорст. Так что вот, в общем, имейте в виду, что я могу дать эти сведения, если вы...
Спасибо.
I would like to ask one question to Gert Madonna. Может быть, лучше по-русски я буду задавать. Докладчику, который говорил о семье Болесов. Я бы хотела спросить с точки зрения Герта, насколько вот этот круг Болесов, которые работали в Голландии, были архитекторами или в большей степени они все-таки были инженерами, способными строить достаточно такие простые, решать простые архитектурные проблемы. То есть вот каково как бы ваше впечатление относительно их возможностей, потому что, конечно, то, что вы показали, демонстрирует очень высокий уровень инженерного мастерства при создании вот этих шлюзов. И в то же время архитектура сама, она, если она была создана тем же самым мастером, она достаточно, как бы такая простая, она вписывается в одну из таких наиболее упрощенных линий развития голландской архитектуры, в которой отсутствует, в частности, ордерное оформление. Я спросила.
Yes, thank you for this question. I think what you see is correct. Of what you're saying is correct. There is a discrepancy between the architecture, the quality of the architecture, and the quality of the waterworks. And for me, this is very interesting because as an architectural historian, you of course always searching for this architectural quality and the theory of architecture and the way it is imposed on buildings, etc. But in the Dutch context, you see that city architects, although they are called architects, their main focus is on these waterworks and on this type of hydraulic engineering. And this is more important for the Dutch cities than this architectural program, which is very incidental. So there is not, Schiedam is a bit of an exception in the 18th century. It has, especially in the second half of the 18th century, a large public building program. But in most towns, the cities are finished, so you could say. So the need for architectural quality and theoretical solutions is not very high. So you see if there are specific projects in these towns, that they will search for this specific quality. They will search for architects within, for instance, the princely court in The Hague. They will use those kind of experience. But you are absolutely right that for the Van Bal-S family, their main focus was on this kind of more engineering aspect. And indeed, the son of Arie van Bal-S, his architecture or his architectural projects were called monstrous in this time. So they choose when Rutger, this person, tried to design public buildings, they were put aside and they were searching for different kind of architects who could deliver this more architectural, mere classical architecture, which was needed in the second half of the 18th century.
Thank you very much. У меня есть еще один вопрос к докладу, посвященному Ростовской крепости. Я хотела бы спросить, дело в том, что вот этот тип фортификационных укреплений, который был реализован вот этим Яном Корнелиусом в Ростове во времена правления Михаила Федоровича, царя Михаила Федоровича, он рассчитан на современный к тому времени уровень развития огнестрельного оружия. Это тот новый тип фортификации, который стал развиваться после того, как само произошло изменение в вооружении европейских стран. В этом смысле Россия находилась в общем, в это время на предыдущем уровне. Она пользовалась устаревшим вооружением. И, собственно, вот как бы этот скачок, он произошел в Петровское время, когда мы видим повсеместное обращение именно вот к этому типу фортификационных укреплений. Вот мне просто интересно, почему возникла потребность в строительстве такого типа укреплений в условиях, когда, собственно, российский контекст был как бы еще слабо знаком и был не способен пользоваться современным европейским вооружением, вот огнестрельным, рассчитанным на большую дальность. Вот, собственно, это изменено.
Yes. Yes, thank you for your question. There is some explanation which I got from a Russian expert which I met in Rostov, who explained to me that actually the father of the Tsar, who was living within the Kremlin walls, he was actually kidnapped during his life from Rostov, and the city was actually plundered by the Tatar invasions. And this was a big shock because there was a kind of a common belief that Rostov would not be sacked because of the kind of holy protection. And although despite this myth or this belief, this happened. So this would be a special reaction from the sun to maybe over-fortify this place with this tradition, this history in mind. This is one explanation. The other explanation, I think, is also that to some extent, there was, of course, especially just around these years, there was a rise of use of fire weapons. If you look at the siege of Smolensk, which of course is much more to the southwest, but still, there was this siege with, let's say, modern warfare. It never happened in Rostov, but maybe they were also anticipating on something that could have happened. In fact, your remark is completely right, and there is no records on fire weapons ever stationed there for protection. Only, let's say, there's pictures of 19th century situation, but not when it was built. It was never actually used where the form is anticipating for. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Elena, please, next question for you. You raise a hand. Elena.
Да, я не совсем вопрос, я просто хотела дополнить предыдущий комментарий вот как раз к докладу, к вопросу Аллы Александровны и к ответу на этот вопрос уважаемого Герта по поводу специфики такой вот архитектуры, которая вроде как с точки зрения искусствоведов не является архитектурой, да? Скажем так. Я как историк промышленной архитектуры сама сталкиваюсь с такой проблемой довольно часто, к тому же занимаюсь как раз промышленной архитектурой прединдустриальной эпохи, это 16-18 века, и в этот период как раз вся эта архитектура промышленная, она выглядит довольно так, ну, скажем так, невзрачно на фоне архитектуры обычной, скажем так, да, дворцовой, в частности, церковной. Вот. И та же гидротехническая архитектура, о которой рассказывал Герт, она, в общем-то, сопряжена с архитектурой промышленной. Это одна сфера деятельности, в которой участвовали в основном инженеры, военные инженеры. Вот. Но мне кажется, что это не должно умалять, скажем так, значение этой архитектуры в истории, всеобщей истории архитектуры, вот такой специфической, да, архитектуры, как гидротехническая и индустриальная. Просто здесь важно, наверное, выработать некий свой иной подход, чем, собственно, я пытаюсь заниматься, вот именно к эстетике инженерных сооружений, которые, я считаю, что имеют право считаться частью всеобщей архитектуры как таковой, несмотря на свои довольно сдержанные эстетические, как бы сказать, несмотря на свой сдержанный эстетический вид. Вот, в общем-то, и все.
Спасибо большое. Thank you very much. I saw Koen Otterheim, Professor of Architectural History from Utrecht. I hope Koen has also a question.
Well, no, of course, not the immediate question. Thank you very much, Ivan, and thank you, Dan and Geert, of course, for your very nice to see you once again live. But just perhaps, one question, perhaps about this Jan Cornelis, since I once looked up for, indeed, already some 20 years ago, looking for this, trying to find some roots of this Jan Cornelis. And the only thing I could find is that in this Admissie tot Landmeter, this great overview, I know, Dan, you know, of course, you know about by Kees Sandvliet and so on a whole complete list of Dutch engineers which officially get an official grade of testimony by the state in Holland. There is one Jan Cornelissen from Zeeland in the early 17th century who did his admission as a land surveyor and fortification engineer, I think around 1600. But I think it's perhaps a bit too early to be the Jan Cornelis from Rostov. Then he would already then, I think, then he would, I think.
Yeah, he most probably died around 1675.
Yes,
so it is possible, but I'm not sure.
No,
and also, what we know about what we think to know about his family is that they're Amsterdam-based.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rodenburg's name was because Amsterdam family. So yeah. And since he calls himself more Jan van Rodenburg than Jan Cornelissen, that's as well. So I also, that's where my research stopped with Jan Cornelissen. So I found only this route, and I was saying, well, that's too early. Must be, it's just Jan Cornelis. It's quite a generic name, and you cannot. There can be 20 Jan Cornelissen in the world at the same time. So it's
yeah, but I would very much invite if anybody would be taking up the challenge to look deeper into this,
exactly, but it's
to
better
cooperate in this. I would be very happy to contact on that.
Exactly, but it's better to look for Jan Rodenburg than a Jan Cornelis to find if you look at names, I think.
Yeah.
And then perhaps one nice thing about, of course, in addition to a very wonderful explanation of the family Boles and their qualities, as explained by Geert Medema, it's already that idea that according to the Russian court already in the 18th century, already that Peter the Great, the whole idea was that indeed for the Netherlands, the Low Countries were the best country to learn about, let's say, construction in wet soil. So we have this wonderful story, which is already described by Dirk van de Vijver in this volume out, the Low Countries at the Crossroads. And when he describes that Peter the Great sent two of his élèves, let's say the young trainees of the architectural school of who had to become in the service of the Tsar, they were sent to the West to be trained as an architect. And first they were sent to Amsterdam, just for 2 years, and where they really had to work with their hands in the mud. For young noblemen from Russia, they really complained that they had to do this terrible, let's say, labor job. But Peter the Great enforced them to do it, otherwise they would be decapitated. And we know that if Peter the Great says something to this, he would do it as well. So they really had to work with their hands in the mud in Amsterdam to learn how to make pillars and foundations in such a swampy soil. And after these 2 years, they were sent to Antwerp and Brussels and Paris to learn proper architecture. So that's the whole idea that in the 18th century, that Holland is only good for, let's say, to learn about foundations, but the really the imperial architecture should, of course, be French style. And that's, of course, you're not interested in, not this the mediocre Dutch brickworks. That's what we're not interested in. So that's very interesting to see already that Peter the Great was very much aware of this. Well, that is this different kind of skills that were available in the West to send his young architects trainees to get acquainted to this different kind of qualities. So it's only a nice little story which really fits in the story about the career of Bollestre, who did really the major carpentry work and let's say the technical work. Well, then, as we know, what are the big names? Do we know as from the architects from St. Petersburg, all these Italian names, Italianate names? But of course, they could not work if not somebody like Bollestre did their foundations.